But now, in Christ Jesus, who you were far away from God, are brought near through the blood of Christ's death. Christ himself is our peace. He made both Jewish people and those who are not Jews one people. They were separated as if there were a wall between them, but Christ broke down that wall of hate by giving his own body. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
The Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus was going through the city of Jericho. A man was there named Zacchaeus, who was a very important tax collector, and he was wealthy. He wanted to see Jesus, but he was not able to because he was too short to see above the crowd. He ran ahead to a place where Jesus would come, and he climbed a sycamore tree so he could see him. When Jesus came to that place, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down. I must stay at your house today." Zacchaeus came down quickly and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to complain. "Jesus is staying with a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, "I will give half my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anyone, I will pay them 4 times more." Jesus said to him, "Salvation has come to this house today, because this man also belongs to the family of Abraham. The Son of Man came to find lost people and save them." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Good morning. The biggest thing I could tell you about this mission trip has to do with perspective. It has nothing to do with the work site, the place we went to, or where we took a shower. Those who are homeless are people. Those who are food insecure are people. This congregation, filled with people. The citizens of Philadelphia, people. And people, collectively, need a set number of things to live, to survive. Food, water, oxygen, shelter, and clothing. All of which is threatened when someone is homeless, suffers from addiction, food insecure, or has financial issues of any kind. But the one thing that costs no money and is just as big as all of the things I mentioned before is companionship. People want to be around people, to make connections with people, and to love and be loved. It makes you live longer, and more importantly, makes you want to stay alive. When you're homeless, it's infinitely more difficult to make connections. When people serve you, they don't make eye contact. When you walk down the road and there's a homeless person sitting there, it's easier to not look at them, and that way you don't have to feel the shame and the guilt. A couple things happened when I went to my first mission site, Broad Street. Broad Street is a 2-story building in the middle of downtown Philadelphia. The first person we met there was named Melissa. She was our volunteer coordinator, and she was talking so fast I couldn't get any questions or a word in. The first thing she did was she asked me and Chris to set out 330 plates exactly on a cart, and we went upstairs. Once we were upstairs, she sat all of the volunteers down and explained what Broad Street does. They provide a mail service for people who may not have an address, so they could send and receive things. Personal care, like they have a nurse on staff, and they have a free closet for clothes that people can try on and take with them. They provide services to get a photo ID. They allow people to use their address for job applications if they don't have one of their own. And upstairs was set up like a restaurant. Tables all down the room, and we were servers, we were bussers, and we fed them and served them like you would in a restaurant. The second person we met was named Lynn, who was a regular volunteer. She told us that out of the 10 biggest cities in the country, Philadelphia had the worst poverty rate, which was 26%. This number, while heartbreaking, made me feel like I was helping to lower that number by volunteering in such an amazing place like Broad Street. I was a server in the yellow section, which was the section closest to the main door to the upstairs. And then they officially opened and people started to sit down. I poured them water and gave them bread and baked ziti. And after about an hour, some of them had ate and left. I decided to clean up the tables in case anyone wanted to sit down, and what I found was a crumpled Hallmark card. The outside had a dog on it and said some pun about wagging or whatever, but I opened it and there were scribbles of words on the top, and in the very middle it said, "Miss you." It was when I looked at this, I had to choke back tears, because up until that point, I had just served them food. I had made eye contact, I had offered them more water, but the one thing I didn't realize I could offer them was family, a sense of companionship. I talked to a couple people, but I didn't get to know them very well, and I realized that the worst thing about being homeless may not be that you don't have a safe bed to sleep in or know where your next meal is coming from. It's that you either can't get in touch with old friends or family, or the shame is too much where you don't want to. The moment I read that letter, a gear started turning in my head and a light flickered, and I realized that you can't just give hungry people food and expect them to be all right. You can't just let a homeless person have a meal or a place to sleep for one night and expect them to be okay. It's everything. Homeless people are people, and they are no less worthy of love and respect as the next person. And that's what this mission trip was about for me. My perspective of people who need serving changed from just giving them food or water to trying to make them feel like they have a family and people care for them. I know all this not only because of Broad Street, but because on the morning of July 4th, there's a park in Philly called Love Park. It had a big area of little fountain-like geysers, and on either side were sculptures of love. But on the sides, people were sitting in chairs and were talking to people, enjoying each other's company. So if I take anything away from this mission trip, it's that. This world is too small for us to choose who gets to be whose family and who gets to feel like they are worth the extra step to ask how their day was.
Good morning. So, there was one work site that stuck out to me, and that would be Broad Street Ministries, as Carly said. Whenever we got there, we were greeted by the volunteer coordinator, Melissa. I've never seen someone so passionate about their work than Melissa. Because it felt like she knew every single person that came in through that door. And she called us by our own names. And the one thing that stuck out to me, they didn't call them homeless, they called them their guests. And the thing is, Broad Street, they give a free lunch to the guests, which I find amazing. It was eye-opening how generous they were, that they do this with nothing that they get in return, that they have nothing that the guests give back to them except their gratitude. I could see that every single guest would come back and say, "Thank you so much." There was one guest in particular when I was a server on Wednesday. His name was David. David had been homeless for 8 years. And I asked him when I first served him if I could get him a glass of water. And he said, absolutely. And I asked him how his day was going, and he said, "I'm the happiest man on the earth. I asked him why, and he said, "I got a job yesterday and I'm moving in an apartment today." And I choked up a bit because I was so happy for him that he could get himself into a home. Because he said that he had lost his job in the years before, and that none of his family cut off ties with him. And that without the volunteers, Broad Street Ministry would not be able to do what they do. And he was so thankful to the volunteers and everyone. And there was another man, I asked if I could pour his water in. Every time after I poured his water, I would just hear a thank you. And that meant so much to me, that he would just thank me just for giving him a glass of water. Most of us take that for granted, that not everyone gets to have water, and that he hadn't been there for a couple months. On the first day that we were there, I was a runner. Let's just say I got my steps in. Running up those 2 flights of stairs was not fun. And at first, I didn't feel like I was doing anything to help the guests. But then I realized just bringing plates down to the kitchen helped the servers not having to deal with all the plates. And that each time I was doing it, there was a purpose behind it. And I was serving the guest. I served the guest by doing my job. The second day there, I was a server. Every time I did this, I still think about all the experiences that I've had through these mission trips, and all the fun times and all the jokes we've had, all the crazy things we do on the mission trips, from roller skating to having firecrackers thrown at us. But I'd like to thank the adults for helping us through this mission trip and through our faith journey. Amen.
Good morning. Love. One tiny word that means so much. According to me, that's the most impactful thing that I've learned on any of my mission trips. And it's not just love, but it's how to love. We are constantly experiencing love. When we smell fresh baked food in the morning, or when someone chases us after class to give us something we left, or when our parents calmly remind us that we still haven't done the dishes for the 4th time that day. This week's theme was Cross the Line. Destroy boundaries and welcome everyone. Love everyone. Jesus did not care if someone was family, a friend, a stranger, or even the devil himself. He never stopped loving, and that is how we should live. We were not created to set boundaries and to block out others, because heaven is just one big community. There aren't divisions there. 1 John 4:16 states, God is love, and whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in them. To truly follow God, we have to live in love. Not alongside, not with at times, and not when it's convenient. We have to constantly and consistently live in love. I'm not trying to say that we need to make a few grand gestures, but that we need to be constantly making small acts of love. On this trip, we learned about lollipop moments, a moment that is extremely impactful to one person in the situation and so minute to the other person that they may even forget that it ever happened. Jesus wasn't always doing grand gestures either. Sometimes he sat and had a meal with individuals that others wouldn't even look at. Or he would say one profound thing that left people lost in thought. Since even Jesus made time for these little lollipop moments, so can we. Think about all the people that you come into contact with every week, at school, at work, even the grocery store, or even church. You never know who is in need of a lollipop moment. So let's live in love and create them.
Good morning. Philadelphia, city of ancient praise, angels, and cheesesteaks. To the angel of the church in Philadelphia, write this: the Holy One, the true, who holds the key of David, who opens, and no one shall close, who closes, and no one shall open. I know your works. Behold, I have left an open door for you, which no one can close. You have limited strength, and yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. Revelations 3. One night, while in the shelter of the forest, his home, Norman heard a voice, a calling, and he began to read this passage from Revelations, after which he made his way to Philadelphia. Norman is homeless. I know, because I met him, at the Broad Street Mission, where all of us got the opportunity to serve. And from the moment I placed his lunch down in front of him, and with a smile that lit up the room, he exclaimed, "Isn't this fantastic? You can have a restaurant-quality lunch, fill out a job application, get an ID, or medical or personal care," he went on. After discussing our stories and disclosing why I was there, Norman, with the same exuberance he used at the beginning of our conversation, disappeared downstairs and printed this message and told me to share it with the young disciples, and I'd like to share it with you. People are often unreasonable, irrational, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some unfaithful friends and some genuine enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and sincere, people may deceive you. Be honest and sincere anyway. What you spend years creating, others could destroy overnight. Create anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, some may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today will often be forgotten. Do good anyway. Give the best that you have. It will never be enough. Give your best anyway. In the final analysis, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. Excuse me. I came to Philly to serve Norman, but then without realizing it, he served me. I have been honored and so blessed and incredibly grateful to serve as an adult leader on this great mission trip to the city with an ancient past and, from what I can tell, a bright future. Likewise, these young disciples, your sons and daughters, have experienced a transformational walk in the footsteps of Jesus. For 1 week, they left the creature comforts of home behind, laid down their cell phones, video games, and social media. They sleep on cold floors, rough carpets, semi-inflated air mattresses, and sometimes pool floats. They eat and drink foods they are most likely not used to, and they get almost daily 5-minute showers, all to meet those in need right where they are. They listen to their stories, recite the sweet sounds of their names, and often make new friends, like Norman. We all get engaged in that every day and arrive at church every Sunday, receiving the rituals, prayers, messages, and communion, and of course, donuts. How many of us, once we step out of this building, even take a small step to enact our faith, to take the grace and forgiveness we've just received and serve our neighbors? Jesus, and in this message, Mother Teresa, tells all of us to follow him and serve anyway. The gift that we as a congregation can give to these young disciples is to take care of their needs for this week and immerse them in service. I will tell you, they give up those distractions gladly, and many come back year after year. They emerge forever changed, and my challenge to you and myself and to them is to help to keep that spirit alive. Will you help me? Amen.